welcome to this down-to-earth How to Date Well seminar in Journey Church. I am Dave DiSabatino. This is my wife, Jessica DiSabatino, whom you know. And we're married. We're married. So that's just to let you know that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's a number of years now. And so we're glad to be with you guys. We're going to have a good time together. Not a long time, but a good time, right? Okay, fair enough. So just so you know, these two in the middle here, they make all the talking. They make all the talking happen. The two bookends here, we make all the fun.
Well, we clean up their mess.
We clean up, yeah. And,
True.
and so we're going to have some fun with you today. But we're glad you're here. So let's begin. We want to start off with this whole dating thing. And just sort of starting off with, when it comes to dating, there are extremes in dating, right? There are extremes. For myself, I thought dating was about just being straight, because I'm a straight guy. So I don't like to beat around the bush. And if you know me, you'll know that I just kind of say things. I'm challenged in this area.
Yes.
And so when I met this young lady, some years ago,
young
very young.
Like 20 years ago.
Yeah, I told her right off the bat
On
our
the first date, ladies, we had driven in the car for 5 minutes.
And I said to her, "Hey, do you think that you could meet someone like the first time and just know that that's the person for you?"
I know exactly where we were, and what I wanted to do at that moment, I was thinking about all the action movies I'd seen.
It was an
and
honest
I was thinking,
question.
could I open up the door, roll out of the car, and then just say, "I'm sorry, your Jeep was not."
I was just trying to be honest, be open. I don't want to hide things. And so that's how I came in and approached this. And so I was just waiting for an answer. You were ready to run and just get out of this scenario.
So at this point, I just pretended I didn't hear that. I am deaf. I have gone temporarily deaf, and I did not hear him.
There are a couple of extremes. Number one is you can be very straightforward and you've got your intentions. I want to get married. Okay, that was my extreme, number one. There's also the other side of dating. It's just getting to know people. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's a good thing. You build friendships. So I had to kind of back up from that a little bit after saying, "Are you ready for marriage?" on our first date, basically. And say, "Oh, maybe we should get to know each other a little bit."
So, I think what you're saying is there can be two extremes. I've met you for the first time. You are the love of my life. I feel the Lord has said, we should get. I will also say that, Dave, I can tell on you a little bit.
You can.
Because we're married now. So he left his journal out.
Oh, no.
No. And I think it was strategic. I think it was so that I could
snooped?
see it. No, it was right there. I wasn't snooping. I was just using my eyes. I wasn't
What did
blind.
I write in my journal? I don't remember. I don't recall this.
You didn't
we've
know
never
this?
talked about this.
I'm telling this right
It's
now.
a secret.
So yeah, in the journal, I mean, it's fine. If you want to write this in your journal, write it in your journal. Just don't write it for anybody to see. We'd gone out maybe twice, and in your journal, you wrote that you felt you were going to marry me. I was
No
like,
way. I had
no. So there's that extreme. And I think Christians can get weird on this extreme, right?
Big time.
We walk around thinking the Lord, this is the person that you are to marry, in some kind of a loud voice.
I think it's often mitigated by fear. So we want to get everything tied up so we feel safe, so we don't have to be vulnerable. So we want to know the end from the beginning. It makes for something super unhealthy in the process. It is, by the way, an absolute miracle that Dave won Jessica's heart in the end, because she was terrified of him. He was just too weird.
I'll give you that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's one extreme, right? Is the needing to know the end before you even get started. Right. We don't recommend that.
No, and I think the other extreme, though, is disposable dating. Right? Just go on as many dates as you can. And listen, if you're here and that has been you, the part of the reason we're talking about this, because I think between the four of us, we've had all of them.
Yes.
Maybe.
So, I mean, I went through a season in my life, and I'm not proud of this, I'm just telling you so that you know, where I booked myself on like 5 dates in one day.
She did.
Very stressful. I don't recommend doing this. And all I remember is my little sister coming up to me and saying, I am so disappointed in you. How can you even say that you love God right now and you're just going up? Well, my point was that I was hungry.
And that was the season where I was...
needed free food and
I
poor.
was calling you and say, well, are you going to call me? And she'd say, I'll call you. But she had 5 other calls at the time.
So that
difficult.
was unhealthy. That's an unhealthy way to go about it as well, right? Because the thing is, then we're treating people like commodities and like a Walmart special.
Yeah, disposable. Like you don't actually value that person as an individual because their heart might be more engaged. They might not be going on 17 dates in a day like Jessica did. I know I'm exaggerating, but so disposable dating has, it's the other end of the extreme. And that isn't to say, because we live in the age of social media, right? And there's lots of dating apps and organizations that do the matchmaking kind of process. And when Jess was going out on the bajillion dates, they didn't have that reality. Now, Calum and I, this is my husband, Calum.
Hello.
That is his real talking voice. So if you can't understand him, that's his impression of a Canadian.
This
do
is
that
how
again.
Canadians talk.
No.
Hey?
No. We are not from Texas. I always tell him we are not from Texas. But if you can't understand him, you can put your hand up and be like,
What did he just say?
Yeah. I think for me, we didn't get married. We met and married when we were 35 and 36. And so we have a very different story to Dave and Jess. Dave was older, but that's because there's 9 years difference between them.
I'm mature.
7. Okay, 7.
You make it look good.
Between us, I think we have 39 years of married life, but they have the lion's share, okay? They're like the old married people. For me, I actually had so many people, maybe like some of you, come up to me and say, have you ever thought about online dating? And I was like, oh, you friggin' people. I want to meet somebody in real time. I don't want to do it online. And it was fairly new, okay, so I'm dating myself. But then finally I thought, just to get everybody off my back, I would ante up and pay for a 3-month whatever.
And that's when you met me.
In fact, no, it was not how I met you. My friend thought it would be good entertainment. He was a lot younger than me. So he decided he would pay for my 3-month trial just so we could laugh. And let me tell you, we laughed a lot. It was worth every penny just for the humor because they matched me. These were my 2 top matches, okay? If you know me, you'll know how ridiculous this is. If you don't know me, maybe it won't be as funny, but they matched me with a guy who, his profile photo, he had 2. One was him holding a very large gun, a machine gun, laying on the hood of a vintage muscle car with no shirt
Sexy.
on. I was like, you are out. But just to laugh, Britain's like, what's the next picture? And it was him with a even bigger machine gun in front of a helicopter wearing camo. I was like, done. We are never, ever communicating. And the second awesomest was a guy who you had to kind of write what you were most proud of, your accomplishments. And his most proud accomplishment was that he was a miniature builder. So he made miniature trees.
If you are a miniature builder, we are not against you.
Yes, not against you, but it was
You might be you would be a good fit for somebody, just not.
not me. So that didn't work for me, and I kind of was overwhelmed by the idea that it could be so disposable. You could just have people messaging you here, there, and everywhere, and you go out with this guy and that guy and the next guy, and that doesn't always sound like a good time to me. So both sides of those ditch can create stress. The guy who's do you want to get married? 5 minutes in the car. And the other extreme of how would I ever find anybody with this much turnover kind of reality? Does that make sense?
Very good.
Yeah.
So we're talking about methods a little bit there. We do know we've got some good friends who are married and they met online through a dating agency. So it's not to say that the
I know a
method...
few, actually.
Oh, so do I.
Many.
But so it's not to say that the method is particularly bad or negative. It's just knowing who you are and what's appropriate to you. And that's probably the key out of that. So I thought we'd roll into some really, bad stories. Our best bad dating stories. My one comes, anyone done any speed dating? No one's done any speed dating?
Okay, don't be ashamed.
A handful of people,
So
but you better explain
the
it.
premise of speed dating, it would be like, we could do it now.
No.
This would be awesome. No.
You didn't know what you signed up
You didn't
for.
know what you were signing up for.
No.
Is you get a room full of people, guys and gals, or just a room full of people, and you have up to 1 minute to sit in front of someone. Usually the girls will sit still and the guys will run around the room, and you have 1 minute to converse. And then timer goes and you go to the next person. And this goes for however long it's deemed. So I was playing, in my other life, I work as a musician, have done since I was young, and still do that now. But I was working at a conference in the UK called Soul Survivor, which is Matt Redman and that whole youth
It's a legendary young adult kind of.
We would have about 16 to 18,000 for each week, and we'd run it for 4 weeks. So they decided one year, we'll do speed dating. That's kind of in. Now this is camping. Okay, we are out camping in the middle of a big field. It's actually a race course in the UK. Now camping in the UK is very different. British people don't camp without hot showers and flushing toilets. It's just how we do it. So we turn up at speed dating. I perhaps have got an unfair advantage in that I'm playing drums on the main stage. So my face is on the Jumbotron. Add to that, Mike Pilavacci, who was the pastor, has said, hey, speed dating tonight. Ladies, here's Calum's number. And he put my mobile number up on the screen. And the way that it works with the speed dating thing, you get your list and you're given a number. And then by the number, you tick a box if you want to go for another round and meet that person again. And then from there, you can go out on a date. That's kind of the premise. So my number's already been flashed up. So I'm already getting text messages with people who haven't even met me because I'm up on the stage. So there's this going against me, if you like. So we do the speed dating thing. The first gal I meet, I was a bit nervous because, bearing in mind we're camping, we're there for a week. This is day 4. Everyone should be a bit grungy, but she's decked up to the nines, high heels, full makeup, and had baked. How do you do that camping? The reason this put me on edge was that this was someone that was trying to kind of overachieve. Right. And I was like, well, there's something else going on here. I'm not sure. This is not going to be just a fun kind of interaction.
So what you're saying is she scared you?
Yeah, because it felt like there was a lot to lose. It felt like anything that I did, I had the ability to crush her hopes. So we sat down, mate mine next to me. Well, he quickly became a friend. I didn't really know him before speed dating, but he was kind of holding on to me like, what do I do? And I'm kind of like, well, I guess we just sit and chat. I'd never been speed dating before. So Mark, he's sitting next to me, and we have our interaction, and she looks and she goes, oh, would you like some baking? Oh, thank you very much. I would. So chose my baking, had a little conversation for about 40 seconds after that, move on to the next person. Mark comes in, sits in front of this gal, and she goes, you can't have any baking. Removes the baking. Which just goes to show...
She was scary.
She was quite scary. So the end result of that, Mark, the guy who was next to me, ended up getting married to this lady. But my particular experience of speed dating was not a good one, because when they kind of, end of round 1, they go to total the scores, and they ended up banning me from the second round because everyone knew my number. And because there were so many ticks on the box. Meet Calum, meet Calum. They hadn't actually met me. They didn't know who I was like. They just had this perception of who they might like me to be.
So you kind of blew up the game.
I blew up the game, so they banned me from the game. So that was my experience of speed dating. That the guy who was scared of speed dating was asking me for advice, got married to the girl who I found very scary, and they've been happily married now for over 20 years.
That's awesome.
You just don't know what can happen.
No.
I went on a blind date one time. I think blind dates are okay. Actually, no. I've never had a positive experience of a blind date. But that's because the blind date was set up by people who didn't really know me. I think if you had somebody who kind of really knew you, it might not be so disastrous. But this guy took me to a automobile show. Again, what's up with the cars and the guys? And they think that I'm gonna love cars. This is not who I am. And then afterward, it was like a marathon. Like, I just recommend if you're going to go on a blind date, go for coffee. Don't go for like an entire day. I didn't have the wisdom back then. So I was kind of trapped because he was my ride. So we did this like whole car show for hours and hours, wandering around some big convention center. And then he took me out for dinner. And we'd barely sat down to dinner. And he explained to me that this was the restaurant that he'd proposed to his last girlfriend at. But good that he's rid of that ball and chain. That's how he described her. So I was like, dude, you were crashing and burning. Like, you were done already, like about 7 hours ago. But like, you're like done. I could not, if I had been in a vehicle, I would have rolled out. But I couldn't, so like that was like a horrible dating experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, all of us, and probably like if you're over the age of 20, you've had some bad dating experience, or you've heard about bad dating experience and it's made you think, I'm going to wait till the right person. And so what we want to talk about, though, is how do we get beyond that? How do we live with realistic expectations? And then how do we also live with this idea? Like, I think what we have to start off from the beginning, and this is like, for maybe some of you, horrible, but 34% of Canadians will not get married. We tell people...
That is
not a hopeful statistic.
So I know, but I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this to say this. We tell people in the church the very wrong thing. We tell them that everybody can have whatever you want. A pony, you want a unicorn, come on up to the front, we'll pray for that, you'll get that. Yeah, and we pray weird things, we say weird things like that, and don't actually ask people to live in reality, to live in contentment, because marriage, and so this is the premise, marriage and dating at the very best is great if you don't have, but it doesn't make you a person.
Right. It's not the sum total of your existence.
Right. So we start off saying that before we get into pragmatics, right? Because I think that's really important, because if you go to pragmatics first and then you think, oh, like I did all these things and nothing worked out and I can't find anybody and I guess God hates me, right? It can take people there. Yeah. So I think we
could do another whole workshop or episode. Maybe we'll do an episode on celibacy at some point, because it is not a flipping curse. Jesus was celibate. There's numerous people throughout church history who were celibate. It used to be more valued than it is now. And we probably need to work on that, but that would be another whole talk.
Right. Joyce told me I wasn't allowed to go into these. We're supposed to be pragmatic. But I am saying that if we don't get this part straight, then all the pragmatics are useless, right? Like we have to get okay with the fact that, this is a desire of my heart, so I believe God will help me in this. But if it doesn't come for 20 or 30 or months or...
Right, you could also have a very full, flourishing life. It's not the be-all and end-all.
No.
So that's an important caveat.
Right, so we just say that off the top. Yeah. Sometimes when married people, I really hate there's like this new kind of, I don't know what it is in Christian circles, but you go to these conferences and some person gets up there to speak, and this is the only reason I'm standing up here is because my beautiful, it's usually a man, so that's why I'm doing that weird voice. This is my beautiful wife, and here she is, isn't she hot, everybody?
Oh, makes me so mad.
And everybody's supposed to go, whoa, it's nonsense. That's nonsense. That is heresy. I will say that is heresy.
And kind of creepy weird.
You don't become who you are because of your spouse. Now, we become who we are because of the community around us. But you don't become yourself. I didn't become myself when I married Dave. Unfortunately, I was myself, and now he has to put on with me.
I thought you were someone else.
Yeah, well, yeah, we become but I become a better person because I'm friends with Joyce. Right. So there is something special and beautiful. I'm not degrading marriage, but I think if we are not careful, we idolize the idea of relationship and marriage, and it is very unhealthy, and it creates very unhealthy marriages because you go in with all this I'm not going to be who I am unless you marry me. Like that's, if you have that internal pressure, when you go out on a date, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. Like, you got to make me better.
Right.
No thanks. Goodbye.
So for a guy like me who wants to know how to do this, because I went for the jugular right away. Like, okay, I need to get married. I am now 25 plus years old. 30. We don't want to go there, okay? I was close to 30 years of age. And I thought, what's my problem? And I just thought, this is like, then I went to the prayer. I said, okay, God, you know what I need, and I'm going to meditate, and I got to find this spouse, and God's got to just plant it. But there's some practical things.
Yeah. So
Like there's some things we can do.
Right.
We can help each other here.
Which, to be perfectly candid, nobody ever told us these things. And we actually, partly why we wanted to do this little seminar today is because nobody talked to us about these realities, and it would have been helpful. We could have saved us some embarrassment or some stress if they had a. So we'll just give you a few barriers, because some of you in the room are dating and some of you are not dating. So this first section is for people who are not dating. Yeah. It's like how to get going, okay? So I know none of you are taking notes, or a few of you are taking notes, great. But I want you to know, we're going to send you the audio later, because you might not remember everything we say, and then you can refresh yourself, okay?
Can you guys see? Okay.
One of the barriers to dating well is that you don't have to know the end from the beginning. We kind of addressed that a little bit, but just take the pressure out. Tell yourself, I don't have to know the end from the beginning. I can just go out for coffee. I can message this person, I can whatever, and it can just be the beginning of something, and I don't have to know what it is. So be okay with going on dates, plural. Getting to know the kind of person you enjoy, finding out if you have any chemistry, knowing how to have conversations about what you value, what your dreams are, what your aspirations are. That's called relating.
Does anyone know how long it takes for you to make a decision about someone sitting over there if you're attracted to someone?
Do you know?
Do you know how long it is?
Statistically?
3 seconds.
In fact, I'm going to tell the story. One time I got...
No idea what this story is, but I'm sure it'll be good.
One time I got broken into.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. It was when I lived in a community house. We had an apartment in the lower part of a big old manor house in Vancouver. And I was in bed, and it was a Saturday morning, and a guy started to come through my bedroom window, which was pretty scary, but it was dark. The room
wasn't me, by the way.
No, I didn't even know Calum at that time. But I did have a boyfriend who would do something stupid like that. And so when this window slid open and this guy started to come through the window, at first I thought it was this guy I was dating. Being an idiot, because he knew where the key was. So why was he doing this? He was an idiot. Yes, Jess will tell you. But anyways, then when his face came into the room enough, I realized it wasn't him. Then I didn't know what was going on because I was woken up, right? And so I didn't scream or anything normal. I said, hello? And the guy scared the crap out of him because it was dark in the room. He's coming from outside into darkness. He couldn't see me at all. So wham, he whacked his head on the thing and slid out the window. And then, cheeky chappy, said, hello? And then I realized I was being burgled, and I went after him to beat the crap out of him. Because fight or flight, I got all fight, okay? We didn't catch him, but when the cops came, I found out he'd burgled a whole bunch of other places in our neighborhood, and the police officer asked me, how would you describe the suspect? And I was like, it's kind of embarrassing, but he was kind of hot. And then she was like, no, that's not embarrassing. You think he was good looking? I was like, yeah, he was very good looking. If I bump into him in
Did you find him for me?
Yeah, no, that's what I said to the cop. I said, if I see him in we had video stores back then. So if I bump into him at Blockbuster or at the laundromat, she said it's very likely he lives in your neighborhood. I was like, can I flirt with him and get his number and then call you? And she was like, you totally can. Because he doesn't have a clue what you look like. Okay? So then she turned her paper around and she showed me that when they describe suspects on her chart, it says super good looking, average, under average, ugly. And we have an immediate assessment. When you meet someone, it's immediate. I'm attracted to this person, totally not attracted to this person. And so that's what she said. Normally when I'm interviewing and asking someone for a descriptor, this is the first thing they tell us. She's like, although not very often are the criminals really good looking, but she had circled really good looking. So that is an immediate assessment you make. Look, there's a whole thing of people minimizing chemistry because we're like trying to be like uber good people, especially if you're a Christian person. And I'm not assuming everyone in the room is, but if you've grown up knowing something about being a good person and having good character and like having self-control, or you have a different valuation about sexuality because you follow Jesus, then you might minimize the need for chemistry. And that actually has gotten a lot of people into trouble, and we'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. But the other thing I want to say about false expectations is when you can just go on some dates without it feeling super loaded, you will get better at asking interesting questions, knowing what you value, and describing yourself. And those things are really important. That's why some of the dating sites actually are helpful, because they make you think of questions you never would have thought of. They make you think about what you value and what you would hope for in a relationship that you might never have kind of come up with. So, or talking to some of your friends, like what are things you talk about when you go on a date? How do you describe like who you are without sounding like you're blowing your own horn too much or you're minimizing, right? Like, how do you do that? And just get yourself in the place where you can do some relating. And that's a really good thing to be able to do well before you're trying to have an intimate, committed relationship. It's just good practice. So start there.
I think the second barrier to dating is this self-preservation. So some of us are very good at this. We've been hurt before, and that is, fool me once, you're not going to fool me twice. So we say to ourselves, okay, so what I'll do is I'll go on this date, and then I'll just try to be, you're not yourself, because you're afraid in some way that if you were to show your real self that you'll get hurt. So when I was in my 20s somewhere, I decided that I was going to be a very serious professor, because I wanted people to know that I was smart. So what I did is I dressed, weird, you didn't know me this then, now. I wore suit jackets everywhere I went. This is why we're the right people to do it, because we're weird, right? So nothing you have done.
None of you would do this.
And I would walk around our university campus, and people would always come up to me and say, like, are you a professor here? And which really did my heart well, because I thought, if I seem serious, people will assume I am serious.
And smart.
Right. The only problem with this is I attracted the wrong, and you can only not be yourself for so long. Do you know, like if you're you can only keep it inside for so long, and then all of a sudden, so I'd go on a couple of dates with someone who's very serious, and then I'd blow it all up, because by the third date, I couldn't keep my professor persona on. The only thing that was great about it is that it kept me from actually getting hurt, because the people that I really would have liked and connected with were not connecting with me. So I could just go on these kind of very bland,
surfacey.
Yeah, I could go out for a nice meal. And you don't know you're doing that while you're doing that. It's not as though in the moment I knew I was doing that. All I knew is that I had been hurt, and I was tired, and I didn't want people telling me they wanted to marry me. I wanted to seem serious, and I just was hungry, and I needed free food. So this idea of self-preservation, some of you had said things like this, well, like, I don't care if I ever get married, it doesn't matter, and it does matter to you. And we don't have to broadcast that to everybody, but we can grow these kind of very thick walls if we're not careful.
Let me just throw this in. Probably my first very serious dating relationship, I was about 24, and this guy was dreamy. Like, he's a lovely man, we're still friends. Good looking, smart, gifted, like
so many jokes here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I know.
So many jokes. I just gotta put it out there. If you're laughing right now, I am too, internally.
But what ended up happening, part of the demise in our relationship was I couldn't be myself because I was so scared I was going to screw it up. Like, if you ever found out, like, the family I grew up in and how messed up I really am, he will run for the hills. So the whole time we were together, it was like, don't blink, don't breathe, don't move, you might ruin the picture. I don't know if you've ever felt like that, but you're not really being you. You're not really showing up because you're just like, this is so awesome and I don't want to screw it up. And so the whole time you can't really get going. And then right around the time I thought, okay, I really need to just be myself, he got cancer. And then he nearly died, and that was like a whole derailing of our relationship. And praise be to God, he didn't die. But there was a lot of water under that bridge. And probably the greatest gift for me in that season was realizing I had some work to do, because I didn't know how to be my full self in a relationship with someone else. And so I went to therapy. It took me about 5 years from the time that relationship ended till I actually went to therapy. And it was the doofus guy that I was dating that Jess was like, what are you doing? So many of my friends were like, that guy's an idiot. That guy's rude. You should not be with that guy. And I just didn't listen. And then when the wheels started to come off there, I thought, I better go and like actually see a professional and get some help. And I recommend it. If you're like that, go to therapy and get some of your wounds healed. Work through some stuff with smart people who can really help you understand why you respond in relationship the way you do. And then I was a little bit more ready for this gentleman.
So I think the next thing we talk about is being in love. Another barrier is being in love with being in love. So this is really accentuated in an Instagram world. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because you want your feed to look, see the snow here, you want to have like a beautiful picture. You want to have, and I talked to somebody last night about this. They said, what I just want is like a beautiful family like yours. Now, the fortunate thing was that I had taken all my 4 kids in the car and it's cute. Our pictures look cute. But I had 2 kids in the car going, I'm going to barf, Mom. I'm going to barf all over this car right now. There, in that moment, I said to him, the thing is, you should probably just be liking your life right now, because every season has hardness in it. No season is Instagram perfect. And being in love with being in love,
dangerous, right?
Yeah.
I think Hollywood's done women in particular no favors.
The Notebook.
We'll talk about the things that are no favors for the guys in a minute, but the no favor for us as women is too much hyper romanticism. So we get this idealism, and seriously, give the gentleman a break. There's no flipping way. It's never going to look like that. It's never going to feel like that. It's never going to be able to result in this hyper-romantic ideal.
Hallmark heresy. Okay, so here's what it is. It's Hallmark heresy. Now that we're at the Christmas season, this is exactly what it is. Do you ever notice that all those, I know none of you probably watched Hallmark movies, but I watched one last week. There are so many wives that have to die at the expense of a Hallmark movie, because it always starts off with some widow who is like the most wonderful person, and he lives in some cabin in Denver, and it's like it's like a $5 million cabin, but he's raising 4 kids that never fight, and they're lovely. And when the stepmother, who just randomly shows up with amnesia to the cabin, comes, the children all accept her, and they love her, and they call her mom by accident, and she somehow knows how to do all the stuff. Every movie is like this. But the stupid thing is, now we say these are stupid when we watch them, but we have bought in a little bit to that lie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would like to just throw in this one gigantic caution for the women in particular. Sometimes you can be out with a guy and you think he'll do. You might not think it on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level, because you're more interested in having a relationship and getting the ideal thing that you're after than you are in the actual person that's sitting in the seat across from you. And guys can feel something is off. They feel like somehow it's not you that they're interested in, guys. You feel like they're interested in the idea of you. Being able to bring someone home for whatever, or having a person on their arm at that next family wedding so that you don't have to be the permanent alone person, and whatever that is. And that is a terrible, terrible thing to do to another person. To love the idea of love more than you love the person is a really, really dangerous place to be in. So I just throw that out as a caution. So you measure your own heart. Is it this person that I really care about? Is it this person that I'm really interested in? Or am I more interested in having a relationship? Because then you could slot in whoever.
Mm-hmm. So following on from that, we have the grass is greener scenario. So by that I mean is My ideal man might be Chris Hemsworth. I'm not
No,
Chris
that's
Hemsworth.
my ideal man.
Just saying.
Yeah,
Wow, this is really going to places I never knew today.
So if that is who I'm basing my manhood upon, I'm probably in for a bit of a disappointing life. Now, actually, as a little aside, I did a bit of research into Chris Hemsworth. And for his arms, in not Thor Ragnarok, but the movie before that, he was on a calorie intake of 12,000 calories a day and working out his arms for 6 hours a day. And his arms were not shot in the movie at all.
Disappointment.
Now, I know this is going a bit of a tangent, but if I've been rowing with Calgary Rowing Club for the last 3 seasons. And I always thought, I'm going to start rowing. Part of it was, I'm going to get in shape. I want to get one of those rowing bodies. Trouble with that is the lot of pain that comes along with trying to get a rowing body. More so in your hands, because you have bloody blisters and raw skin. And so the pain of this effort to try and get this rowing body, if that was my main motivation for doing it, is really not worth it, and also is not attractive. So when you put yourself up against, if only I was, fill in the blank, you're only setting yourself up for some disappointment. So it could be that I'm thinking, in my mind, I am Chris Hemsworth. That means I am going to attract Scarlett Johansson, or someone who is on the same kind of level as that. Now, most of us have been tinged with the ugly stick somehow. It's just called being a human being.
This is real life talk here today, okay, everybody?
In some way, the ugly stick is not far from us. Now, over this last couple of weeks, I got succumbed to the flu. And when my immune system
mega succumbed.
goes out, I was in bed with shakes and shivers for a good 8 days, trying to throw a fever. In the course of that, my immune system just went out the window, and so I had literally a head full of cold sores.
He had over 40 cold sores on his face.
So my
This
boys,
is looking great now.
my loving family, my boys came up with a new name for their dad, which was Gut Face. The reason being, Dad, it's because it looks like you've eaten a human and their guts are all over your face. So, I say that to say, to be self-aware is probably the biggest thing that you can do to help yourself. Really know who you are. Really know that all the effort of presenting yourself in whatever way you want to do it, the time and energy it takes, is only worth 3 seconds of someone else's time.
They're going to make an assessment of their level of attraction to you in that amount of time, right? And so some of us get the grass greener scenario. So you think, yeah, she seems really great, but like maybe there's like somebody else that's even greater, right? And then you're always hedging your bets against things being more uber with the next person. Particularly, this temptation is around attraction. So don't minimize the attraction, but like, don't think you're Chris Hemsworth waiting for Scarlett Johansson when you're not that.
So the other name I want to throw in is Matt Damon. Everyone know Matt Damon? The reason I throw in Matt Damon is that, we know him from the Bourne movies, and he's pretty cut.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah, baby. And so, if you look at all the Bourne movies, you can think that Matt Damon is Jason Bourne. But did anyone see him in, what's the last movie, Downsizing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, did you notice his physical transformation for that role? Did anyone notice?
Yeah, he looks regular.
His chest has gone down to his gut, and he's looking appropriate for a mid-40s kind of guy. Right? He's an appropriate kind of body shape, and yet he's still Matt Damon. Right? So he's been playing these roles. So you can either go through life playing these different roles and doing what you need to do to play these different roles, or you can be yourself.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the grass is greener on the other side, what dating is not is a buffet. Like at some point, I've had to say to people, this is not a buffet. get your dang meal, sit down and eat the meal. Because some of you are like, well, if I go up to the buffet one more time. Do you never have this when you go to, but Calgary doesn't have a lot of buffets because we're healthy here. But in other places in the world, there's like this, if you go to Las Vegas and go to a buffet, you can think to yourself, the next time I go up to the meal, I'm going to get something amazing. And so then you end up just like eating yourself silly and it's stupid and you feel sick at the end of it. But it's because at the next station it's going to be even more amazing. And at some point we have to say to ourselves, no, the grass is not greener on the other side. I'm not going to get something better at the omelet station than at the seafoods. I'm just going to pick a meal. I'm going to sit down and enjoy that meal.
Yeah.
So there is real tension in all of this, though, that there are two sides to ditch to every truth. And what you want to do, and what we're purposing, I think, in all of our life to do is come down the middle somewhere. We don't want to end in the ditch on either side.
Yeah, and we want to be careful to debunk the myth of, are you the one? You must be the one, right? I walked down this road a bit and recognized that there are many options. There are many opportunities. And you just need to decide. You just need to say, this is the one I'm choosing. This is the one that seems to fit the criteria that God has placed in my life, that I'm looking forward to, that, what if something goes wrong and I choose the wrong one? My life is going to be terrible. It's how you walk through the choices that you decide and the choices that you make. And so being careful of not being so super spiritual, so spooky. I've got to find the right one. There must be only one for me. Right?
Yeah, I think for some of us this is mind-blowing theologically. But I want to just pull, if a philosophy doesn't work in every part of your life, it's not a true philosophy. So my question to you, if you believe in the theory of the one, do you get up in the morning and say, God, there must be one outfit for me today? What is the one outfit that I am to wear today? And if you don't have a prayer meeting over the one outfit that you're supposed to be wearing today, then that philosophy is broken.
Right. Or what's the one job I'm supposed to do in my life? The one vocation,
Right. And I think for a lot of Christians, this is like...
If it falls way down, though, folks, because what happens is, what if the one doesn't choose to follow God or to listen to the Holy Spirit?
Or like you.
Or dies, or some weird thing happens, right? What if they don't like you back? Oopsie-daisy. I think the way I've always approached this is believing that there are many types of people, many individuals I could marry, but that I had to make a wise decision about which of those people would be the best person to marry.
Yeah, and see, this puts the onus back on us, right? This doesn't allow us to have a lazy Christianity that kind of just float around, God will send me the one will come. That's not biblical at all. What's biblical is that we would do the work of knowing ourselves, that we'd get in communication with Jesus and say, what kind of a person, God, have you created me to be? And then we'd actually, there's nobody in the Bible, no, you can't show me one person that floated around life and everything happened for them. There is this idea that we partner with God, that he actually allows us to partner with him and say, what kind of person are you calling me to be, God? And there's joy in that too. And that's why, some of you are weirded out that Joyce could say someone she dated is still a very good-looking man. But that's freedom. That's true. Freedom in that, because she didn't believe that once she saw Calum, Calum is all I see. Calum is all I see. No, it's about this decision
gut face.
that we make every day to say, no, I choose Dave is the one for me. Yeah, every day.
Let's throw this in. On the other side of marriage, you will always be attracted to other people. Full stop. It actually happens. This isn't sort of like you walk up to the front of a room, you make some vows, and then you're never attracted to anybody else in your life. Hello, you're still a human person. And that's where covenant choice makes all the difference, because you've decided something, so you don't.
Yeah, you can see, though, where this theology gets people into weird spots, because what happens if I'm the one, you're supposed to be the one, and we get married, and somebody else comes into my life, and I feel like, I must have gotten the decision wrong. So Dave and I actually know somebody, and it's a terrible story. They got married to somebody, and then they thought, oh, that wasn't the one. So they divorced the person and married the person that they thought was the one. When they got married to that person, they realized that that person probably wasn't the one. So they divorced the person they married and remarried the first person.
Messed up, people. None of you would do that.
No.
No, but I'm just
You're
saying to
too
say
smart.
those theological ideas that are back. So our theology does matter in this.
Calum, why don't you say a bit about that? Instead of goofy now.
So I'm going to say about what actually made me make the decision to ask Joyce to marry me. So, a bit of backstory. I had been engaged once before. I was in the UK. Figured out, actually, after about a year of being engaged, not even that long, about 6 months into it, that perhaps I was wanting to get married because the other person wanted to get married, and I could really fulfill that role. That was really what I was doing. So then, once that realization had hit me, I then, well, what do I do with this? Do I just burn this? Is this, so now I had this thing of how do I get disengaged? Because there's a process of getting engaged, so there must be a process of disengagement. So that was another 6 months of trying to roll that out in a healthy way. Gifts had already been bought, venues were booked. A lot of expense already gone into this thing. But it came to this decision, well, I think I'm not doing this for the right reason. So I got disengaged, had that process. So now I meet Joyce.
This wasn't like 5 minutes later. This was a few years later.
Actually, why don't you say the first time we met?
No.
Go on, say that bit. Because this is an example of me not caring about being married.
Okay.
And I'm past
this is actually maybe a good example because when people hear our story, they think it's so romantic. Okay? But by now you might have clued in that we'd had a good 15 years of loneliness and mistakes that predicated the moment I'm about to tell you. Okay? So it isn't all roses and fairy tales. But I met him in a restaurant in Nova Scotia. In a restaurant, we got seated at the table side by side. And I was so tired because I taught 5 times at this conference and I was just done. So I was like sort of throw the ball to the stranger and make him talk about himself. So I said, hi, I haven't met you yet. My name's Joyce. And he's like, hello, I'm Calum. And I was like,
actually how I talk.
Are you visiting Canada? Are you for the conference or do you live over here? And he said, I've just immigrated over 6 weeks ago, but I live on the other coast. And so we're chatting about where. And then I said, so what's your plan for your 1-year visa? Because I figured out that much in the first 3 minutes of conversation. And he goes, totally deadpan, looks right at me, and he goes, I thought I'd find a wife in the first 6 months and go from there. And then I just looked at him, I was like, you're a complete twit. And he's like, thank God, a Canadian with a sense of humor. I don't have to say, I'm just joking, right? So he made this joke about finding a wife in the first 6 months. He found a wife in the first 6 weeks. And he was only kidding around. So that was lunch, and it was discombobulating to me, for sure. I went into the hallway.
I wasn't actually being totally serious with that comment.
No, he was joking.
That was just me, like, yeah, whatever.
He's having a laugh.
I'm just trying to have fun. Just
and
whatever.
he says things for shock value regularly. Anybody who knows him, that's what he does, because it's really funny. He says things that are super inappropriate that you just don't say.
No.
And so what ended up happening, though, is I bumped into him 3 more times that day, to the point where about 2 o'clock in the morning at a bonfire, I was like, I gotta get away from this guy. Like, I'm turning into a grade 9 bimbo. I have to go. Because he was making me feel like emotion and responding to him like I'd never felt, ever.
Oh, yeah.
So I just got up and left and said, super nice to meet you all. Hope to see you again in 4 years, because that conference happens every 4 years. So then I left. And he was a little gutted. The journal came out. He wrote in his journal, I thought she'd throw me a bone or something, like, here's my number, look me up in Vancouver sometime. Nothing. I got in my car with my friend in the morning at 8, and we drove 7.5 hours across to New Brunswick to stay with some friends for a week. I went to bed early, dog-tired. Friday morning, so we met Wednesday lunch. Friday morning, I'm sitting on the patio eating my toast, and he walks out of their house. And I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, what are you doing here? My friend is booting me under the table like, what the heck? She was pretty excited. And I just knew I am so fill in the blank. Like, this is going to be a really difficult week for me because I am undone by this man. So about 3 days in, he said, I like to date you. This is like fast, okay? But he said, I will not date unless it's in community. So you get vetted by my people. And I was like, what do you mean vetted by your people? He's like, they got to meet you, they got to like you, they got to think I'm not being an idiot, or it's a no-go. And I was like, okay, well, you got to get vetted by my people. You got people, I got people too, you know. But it was kind of music to my ears to hear somebody who was willing to walk this out in the context of community. And we got married 7 months and 2 days after we met, which also may be super insane, but we were old. And so one of our friends said to us, if you can't figure it out at your age, you're probably never going to. And yet, there came a crisis point, which is what Calum's going to tell you about, where he had to wrestle with the grass greener scenario and the one.
So there I am falling into, is Joyce the one? Thinking and negating the enjoyment I'm having from connecting with Joyce, getting to know her, kind of seeing a future together, but still this little lingering thing, is she the one? Having been burnt a bit before. How do I best protect myself? How do I best protect her?
And you wanted God to tell you.
Yep. So I was waiting for God to do the neon sign with the big arrow above Joyce going, the one. That's really what I was waiting for. So it was Christmas Eve. And I can't sleep. I'm thinking perhaps it's because it's Christmas Eve. Nope. It was because it felt like God was sitting at the end of the bed, and I'm saying to God, is she the one? And God says, it's up to you. Now, just in that little reflection back to me, it's up to you. You make the choice. But I'm like, but God, you got to tell me, because I don't want to get this wrong. Nope, it's up to you. And what he meant by that, I said, well, tell me more. Well, I'll be with you in whatever your decision is. And I will journey with you through whatever that decision is and whatever it looks like. So in a sense, it was like God saying, you can't blame this on me, whether it goes well or it doesn't go well. You can't blame me, but I'll be with you in the journey and on the journey. And so that's what gave me the confidence to go, actually, this isn't a getting it right or getting it wrong. This is making a decision to go a certain direction, and God will be with me in
and
it.
Knowing, there's things, the healthy things to measure it against, wisdom, like what do all my people think of this person?
And so the underlying thing for me was, do I want to do life without Joyce, or would I rather do life with Joyce? And so it wasn't any more romantic than, yeah, I like to be with her.
He said to me he couldn't imagine life without me, which I thought was quite a romantic statement.
Which is a more romantic way of putting it. But really it was like, yeah. And that was really what kind of fueled that decision. And then came the thing of, now I've got to live into that decision. And that's a whole other gambit. But to just get over that kind of, now, we'd been dating a long time. Nope. We've been dating
like 4.5 months, 5 months.
But it still made me, I had to answer that question for myself. Do I want to set my direction down this course? Not knowing the end from the beginning, not knowing if I'm going to be good enough, not knowing if I'm going to eat 8,000 calories a day to get arms like Chris Hemsworth. But is this a decision that I can totally own and go for, not knowing the end from the beginning? There we are. That's quiet in the room.
What was interesting for me is when we started dating, it was a bit freaky because Jess had a history, and when I say history, her history was that she was proposed to and was going to be married, and so, you want me? And so some friends sort of set us up, and I thought, so this is like a rebound date? Like, what is this going to be? Yeah. And so this whole world of, I don't know if I want to walk into some sort of relationship like this. And so I was... Until
he got me in the car for the first time.
And then like, wow, okay. So I'm not a very emotional person. I mean, like I've already told you, are you the one? That kind of thing. And but I remember as we started dating and started talking, then we got past the weird stage. Right. And we started building a relationship, and then I remember asking her, and she had, we were both falling in love, whatever that means. And I said to you, it seems funny to me. I'm expecting fireworks. I'm expecting you to be a bit more emotional, like show some like love or something. You're just seems to be a decision you're making, a decision. Well, like where's the emotional,
Yes.
feelings, ooey gooey goodness, right? And I don't know where that came from, but I think that's the world I was living in or thinking when this is the one for you, the decisions you've made, that there should be fireworks. And that just wasn't reality.
Yeah, and for some people it might be. I think I'd come through a great season of grief. And some of you, maybe you haven't been able to like get into a relationship because you're looking for like, ooh, like, but if you've come through a season of grief, it's very human to feel like, okay, we're going to date. And some of you would say, well, it's not real love then. I had friends of mine when Dave and I were dating that said, well, if you're not feeling like, ooh, then you shouldn't do it. It's not God's will for you. And thank God I had parents at the time who said, okay, so like you're not going to be under fireworks. You're mostly going to be paying hydro bills. You realize this, right? Like that's mostly what you're going to be doing in life. And there will be times where you're going to make fireworks happen, but you make them. Fireworks don't. It is much of what we believe about love and romance is false. We think that it happens to us, and in fact, it's something that we make happen. So once you're married, romance is something that you generate. It's not like generated from the universe. We have mixed a lot of Eastern thought with our dating, like it's the universe somehow comes and like takes you to Banff Springs and you float around on the carpet and you don't think about it, the fact that it's like $700 a minute to stay there. You just think, great, we're so rich now in love that this will pay for it. And so that is really true. Something I tell people often, this is maybe my favorite thing to tell people.
She's going to get excited now. People put
Someday I will write a book called
Write
this.
these words down.
Yes. Now, I'm going to tell you this. If you want to date someone or you want to get married, you must treat it like a job. So now by that, I mean this. If you were to tell me, I would really, like Jess, I really want to work someday. I'm hoping that someday I'm going to get off welfare and I'm going to work. And I were to say to you, well, what are you doing about that? Well, I'm just really waiting for the right job to come. I'm sitting on my parents' couch. I'm watching Netflix all day long, but I want to work. Do you know what I would say? You're delusional. Because the right job is not coming to you. No one's going to knock on your mom's door and say, hey, this is Google. We're wondering if you'd like to become the senior vice president of our company. Like, that is never happening, not in a million years. It's also not happening if you don't brush your hair, you don't like put on some right clothes, if you go for an interview and show up like, I don't know if I want this job. I don't even know if I want a job, right? Like, basically, I don't even know if I like this company. I don't even like you. You would never get a job. You would remain unemployed forever. And some of us, this is exactly how we treat our dating life. I'm just waiting for God to bring me the right person. Yeah, like I want a relationship, but I'm like on my parents' couch. I'm not putting myself out there. I don't have a resume. Now, I'm not saying you need to get a physical resume, but I am saying this. Love does not happen by accident. It happens because you decide, you square your shoulders back and say, nah, I got something to give. I have a way to put myself out there. I'm meeting people. If the only people you meet are the same people you're meeting over and over and over again, get moving. Go places. Go to things like this. Go to speed dating. Go sign yourself up for. You must treat it like a job, because just like if you couldn't find work, you just keep putting resumes out.
Yeah, you have to put your best foot forward.
And it doesn't mean you go if you don't want to work at the dump. Then you don't go take a resume to the dump. So I'm not saying go everywhere, like go to bars and clubs. I'm not saying that. But I am saying, like, if you want to get a job at Google, then go to every single tech company and say, I would like to, hi, here I am. This is all the things that I'm good at. I have this qualification. And you don't have to, there's a difference between bragging and just putting your best foot forward.
So, but this pushes in on some of our buttons because we
I know
somehow...
some of you are mad right now. You're mad. It's great.
Because somehow we have a hyper mystical idea, especially if you've been in the church your whole life, that somehow magically a relationship's going to come to you.
We don't say magically, though. We say spiritually.
God
like the Spirit of
ordained.
God. And sometimes we'll say it with our head tipped because it sounds way more...
So I had
The Lord will bring
housemates
someone.
over the years who were always mad at me because I was always going out on dates. Now, I never did like 5 in a day because I wasn't like Jessica and my evil ways.
She's superior.
But I went on dates. Why did I go on dates? Because I was friendly and cute and I dressed nice and I wasn't afraid to talk to guys. And I went to a seminary. So like there were a lot of men in the seminary. Now, I didn't ever start the relationship like they were my brothers. So then it wasn't going to be weird if I decided to flirt with them. I always just went in straight away with like a little bubbliness of love and then we could see. Some of you built all your relationships so like pal, that you can't even think about somebody being attractive.
Listen, ladies, if you're calling all the guys bruh, you're not going to date them. Because now they are your brother. And you shouldn't date your brother.
And so you have to find context to overlap. So I remember one of my housemates being quite mad actually because she's a little bit older than me when I started dating this guy and then she actually said, I was like, you're being all chippy with me, like what's going on? And then it came out, oh, I'm older. So she thought she should get to date someone first. I was like,
You ain't got time for that. You got a
you're
friend
like
like that?
2 years older than me. What are you talking about? Like, we were in our late 20s, early 30s. Like, I'm not sitting around waiting until you get a date so that I can get a date. Like, that's just, do you understand how insane that sounds? So for me, it was like if a friend said, hey, I'm going to see these guys play at the Railway Club. Do you want to come? Like, yes, I want to come. And we're going to go to this event. Do you want to come? Yes, I want to come. We're going to have a house party. Do you want to come? I hate house parties, but yes, I want to come. Mm-hmm. And then I started saying, okay, I like to cook, so I'm going to have a dinner party, and you can bring some friends. And you create circles of relationship, exposure. I didn't have a great time with the miniature model maker guy on the, so that wasn't going to be my way. But that didn't mean I was going to sit at home, fingers crossed, someone was going to magically find me and call me up. The irony is, with all my putting myself out there, what happened? I sat down in a restaurant with a bunch of people because my flippin' friend is diabetic and we had to jump the queue. And I ended up sitting next to this guy. But I at least knew how to have a conversation with the fellow and listen to his stupidity and like tell him you're an idiot because he was too silly and be normal. And I don't think if I hadn't put myself in all those contexts, I would have been able to do that with Calum.
Right, and the point is that you just get yourself in motion. You must get yourself in motion. This is true for anything. I mean, this is a very similar topic to if we were at an employment. You must put yourself in motion. Right.
Very good. Guys, you want to say something about risking? We are going to have Q&A in a few minutes. So if you have questions, feel free to think of them.
Well, part of it is too, as you get going, like, so this is a funny thing that Dave and this maybe applies to some of you who are actually dating. So Dave knew me as a communicator. He would come to a young adults group that I was kind of pastoring.
Yes.
But anyways, when I speak, I can be funny, but in real life, I'm not funny at all. But Dave didn't know this. So he thought that I was going to be like a barrel of laughs. And because one time he just thought I was funny. But then in real life, when we got married, he was like, before we got married.
Where are the jokes? Why aren't you funny? What happened to you?
Because I'm quite serious.
Where are you right now?
And This is true, though, but you can see that if you don't, this is maybe before, you found I wasn't really funny.
Yes, I did. But there are moments of that, and I think I was wanting something for her to be, right? And so I think you have to just be aware of that. Like, you can't make someone be something that you need or want. It's going to be who they are. You got to conform to understand that, man, am I okay with not making this person someone else, something I'm looking for? Are they compatible? Is this gonna work?
Yeah.
Can I work with this individual? Can I love this individual for who they are? They're not gonna create in me something new, but it's gonna be a wonderful blend as we come together.
Yeah.
And
Compromise
you
always.
just need to understand that.
Always going to be compromises. There is going to be nobody that you date that you go, they're the perfect one for me. That is a false. Now Dave is the perfect one for me. Is he perfect? No. Am I perfect? No. I'm like messy pants, and Dave is like super, super clean. He vacuumed for a hobby when we first got married. Our day off, he'd be like, "Let's get up and clean the house."
Come on, let's get to it.
Hey, I got a job vacuuming. Actually, Joyce got the job vacuuming in the apartment block we were to get some money off our rent. Who ended up doing it?
Yeah. That's why we're friends right here. So the sometimes I think we throw people to the curb too early too.
Right.
So we just say, well, I don't really like that. Like Dave,
There's going to be like a time where you just
Many things.
everything's wonderful about this person. You just think they're the world, and just know that there's going to be another side.
Oh, just
There's-
like every
there's gonna
friend
be
you have.
Another part of this relationship, you realize, oh, there are things I don't really like about this individual. They drive me crazy, and those are part of what make the relationship rich. It's learning how to navigate and work with that, because there are things about you that aren't so awesome. And they're going to find out about that as well, right?
Yep. So can I make an observation as an outside Canadian to the Canadian guys? Like, Canada is known around the world for being peacemakers. But what I find, an observation perhaps with guys here, which is different to the UK culture, is that I generally find that as men we're quite passive. We're not really good at we're not Texans.
amens from the crowd.
We're not taking the bull by the horns here, and so we don't do that. So I could be completely out to lunch with that, but that seems to be how I
the passivity is an issue.
And it's confusing for me, and I'm not looking to date, because I can think someone is saying something, but they don't actually mean what they're saying. They're not committed to that thing. They're not committed to even, okay, let's meet up for a pint. And I never know if it's going to happen until it's happened, which is weird for me, because being a Brit, we commit to drinking. If I'm going for a pint, I'm going for a pint.
Do you understand what we're talking about here, though? Like, I think sometimes I'm just going to ante up and talk to the gents in the room just for a minute, okay? Now, I'm like on the Myers-Briggs testing personality thing. Jess and I are the same. On an Enneagram, we're like an 8. So we are not passive people, okay? We are like, our parallels in history are Attila the Hun, General MacArthur, and Hitler, okay?
Welcome to my marriage.
Yeah.
Wow, good
So
people.
we're like get her done kind of ladies. So you can put that through a filter of like my expectation then of the kind of man that I was anticipating. I am very, very thankful that Calum is not a passive man. He tells me what he thinks. We were dating for about 2 weeks, and he got upset with me, rightly so. One day in the car, he said, look, because he'd helped me move, he said, if you ever micromanage me again like that, we're done. And I was like, oh my goodness, a guy who can put me in my place. Yes! He got mega points from me because he could tell me the straight goods about how he was experiencing the way I was treating him, getting a job done. Now, I learned from that and didn't micromanage him again, or we would not be married, okay? But there's something about him not being passive that was incredibly attractive to me. I think we have a culture of like hanging out. So lots of times we hang out, and the guy might be like totally into the girl, but the girl has no clue. And then you start to feel awkward, like, are we gonna have to have a DTR? Anybody? Define the relationship? And then, you know what, for women, we get all kinds of weird cultural messages. Let's talk about this for a minute. Where we feel like, is it okay for me to like initiate the DTR? Because I'm super confused and I'm really falling for this guy, but like, what if we are just friends? What if I'm like reading into everything? And so the thing that I always say to women is, you decide how long you can go in the laissez-faire, super cash reality of building a friendship. And if that time tips over to, I'm now building a myth in my mind, then you're in dangerous territory. And that's when you need to say, can we just talk about this? Because I don't want to like I don't want to be thinking this is more than it is. I just want to be like in the real. And if it's not more than it is, that's totally fine. Like, you don't have to be a weirdo about it. But it's okay.
You don't have to be angry.
No, you don't have to be angry. If you've gotten to the point where you're going to be angry, then you should have had the DTR like 3 weeks earlier, okay?
Or 3 years.
Yeah. But just let's say to the gents in the room, it's not super kind to put somebody in that position if you actually know what your intentions are. And if you're just like, yeah, I dig you, but I don't know for sure, like, at least say that. At least say, I'm interested in you. Like, I hope that's obvious. It might not be obvious. Like, to you, it might be like, oh, I don't really hang out with a guy by myself this often. But to the guy, it might be more obvious to him that this is like what he's doing. Like, women are amazing, guys. We really are, but we cannot read minds.
Well, you say that, but...
So please just say some things. Don't be too passive, because you might burn something down to the ground. She might get real mad and feel like she's been led down the garden path. Or she might quit you before you actually get the courage to ante up and say, I dig you. Or however you would phrase it.
Can I just speak then maybe to the ladies a little bit? Well, this could be the gentlemen too. Sometimes, if you've gone a long time not dating people, you can get like a bad attitude about it.
Chip on the shoulder.
A chip on your shoulder. I think the number one thing, besides treat it like a job, it's this: don't go into this with this like, I don't think this is going to work anyways, like, wow me. A couple years ago, I met with a young woman who, she sat across the table and we talked about a bunch of other things, but basically she was a mad person. Do you know when you meet a mad person? And the thing is, when I'm a mad person, in my heart of hearts, I know I'm being a mad person. Okay, so you'll be the only person that can know if you're mad. So this girl's mad. And I said to her, what are you mad about? Well, all the guys suck that go to our church and that go to other churches, they all suck, she said to me. And she was kind of getting loud. And no guys, like, they just, and I said, I said, do you want me to level with you right now? Do you want me to tell you why you don't have a boyfriend or you can't get a date? Because you're mean. And everybody knows that you're mean and angry.
They can feel the vibe.
So what you need to do, and what I would say, if you've been single for a long time and you're not wanting to be single, you need to ask your girlfriends, because girlfriends that love you. Everybody needs someone who tells them the truth. You need somebody in your life who will get in front of you and say, Joyce? She's not angry, but if she was, Joyce, you're angry.
Giving off mean vibes.
And nobody wants, because they're scared of you. Yeah. They're scared of you.
And sometimes it's not even just angry vibes. Sometimes we give off, we feel like our insecurity, our vulnerability, and so we hyper project, like, I'm uber smart. I want everybody to know I'm uber smart. It's like, people know you're smart. Like, you don't have to give that off. Right? Can you give off warmth, openness, welcome, kindness?
But you need somebody who will tell you the truth. So this girl that I was meeting with, she said, you mean to tell me that people don't find me fun? No, not at all. And you need somebody who will tell you that, because I think we got a lot of people who are mad, like walking around kind of mad that no one will date them. It's because nobody's had the guts to tell you you're not much. It's somewhat similar. So what I kind of would look at it is, if you're not getting a job and you're putting your resume out everywhere, you need somebody who's going to look at that resume and go, I know why you're not getting a job. Your resume sucks. You need to fix the resume a little bit. And I would say that, like, as single people, and just as people in general, as people who like love each other, be community to one another and tell each other the truth. Hey, your resume could use a little bit, like your profile pictures. Weird. It's weird. You shouldn't be drinking in your job resume, or you shouldn't.
Yeah, Calum, you should put the machine gun down.
Yeah, exactly.
Ain't nobody gonna want to go for that.
So I'm not even talking, like, you might have a profile online, that's one thing, but, like, how are you projecting yourself? How are you projecting yourself? How do people, so what you might want to ask is, how do I project myself to people around? Do I project myself like I'm too cool, or like I'm so hurt? Or you got to figure out how you project yourself, because generally speaking, it's an issue of projection. People have an issue of.
But it's projection, though, in the context of really who you are.
Right.
because I can project this falsehood, but that's not going to last long at all. So you need your friends to tell you, you know, and that's kind of the place of community, right? You discover who you are in the context of others.
Yeah, and if every time your friends are with you and the person you're dating, you don't seem like yourself, they need to tell you. Or vice versa, if you're one of those friends. If your friend is becoming somehow not themselves. I've had some friends have to tell me that over the years. Can we just suggest that you need to measure as you go? Some of you are in dating relationships and you came not trying to figure out like how to date, but or get a date, but how to do the dating journey well. And I just want to talk about that for a few minutes. We're going to chime in on that here. You need to measure as you go. So it's not knowing the end from the beginning. You're in it, you're going to walk it out, you're going to try and figure it out on the journey. Do we have similar interests? Are our values the same? Are they values that we just say, this is what I value, or are they actually lived? We have goals that are aligned? Like, you know, if the goals are totally different for future, that's probably something to pay attention to. It doesn't have to be same, but you have to be able to measure, is this going to be conflicted? Are we already conflicted? Because if you are long-term, it's not going to work. And I think sometimes we get into something and then we don't want to back out of it because we don't want to have to go through this all over again. Right. And so we just carry on. But let me tell you, like, I always, my nephew one time asked me, like, don't you wish you were married? I was about 33, and he just was, like, mortified that he had this aunt that was so old. He was 15, right? So I seemed ancient. But he said, don't you wish you were married? And I said, I would way rather be a single person wishing to be married than a married person wishing to be single. That is a much more painful place to be. And if you've talked to anyone who's endured a divorce, or maybe some people in the room even have, you know that there's truth to that. So if you're conflicted in your dating relationship and you know there's like big red flags, go back to being single. Even though that sucks, because it's going to suck less than being in a really, really messy marriage.
So one of the things that Joyce and I, before we got engaged, we did some pre-engagement counseling.
It's better than premarital, people. Like, your church might offer premarital, but then you're already engaged. Do pre-engagement.
It kind of shows, it showed me a lot about myself that I was kind of aware of, but not really. But in the context of these, we did 5 sessions, 2 hours each, with a pastoral couple. And for me, it was the biggest kind of growth spurt for me in terms of being self-aware and in terms of us forming a relationship, understanding that we had a lot more together than we did apart, and being able to get some tools, really, to be able to invest
it made getting married a really safe bet, because we'd put everything out there. There was nothing that was going to be hidden, and we had people to process it with. And if I'm honest, a couple of our sessions, I cried so hard that we had to go and sit in the pub and wait for my eyes to like de-swell so I could drive a car.
The only bar that was open was the Shark Club.
They won't know what that is.
No, Shark Club. So it's a sports bar.
It's not like a romantic place to hang out.
We got, you got MMA fighting on the screen.
And I'm like bleary-eyed, blotchy-faced, swollen.
But giving a place that can happen. And for us, it was very accelerated, but we were old. So that was about time, to figure some of that stuff out.
Yeah, I think, I was just going to say, I think for the process of walking it out, there's a couple things I would just throw in. If you're in a dating relationship and maybe you're not sure about going to pre-engagement yet, but you're trying to figure out, like, is this someone I can do life with? Like, let's face it, when you get married, you don't have date night every night of the week. That is not a normal scenario. That's not life. So can you do some mundane things together when you're dating? Like housework. I'll come over, I'll help you clean the bathrooms. Give me that. What does your mom need done? Like, say you're at home. Well, we can do that for her, right? Can you get the groceries and bring them over? Can you look after some kids? This was when I knew I could marry this gentleman. We went to the UK and I met his mother and his sister and his little nephew. And then Karis was solo parenting because her husband was in the war in Afghanistan, and she was exhausted, and she just wanted, like, we were there, and she was like, can I go out with Polly tonight? And we were like, sure, we can babysit. And then I watched him be firm with his nephew and, like, care for him and show him. And then I was like, my heart was melting. I was like, oh my goodness, he's going to be an amazing dad.
So guys, borrow some kids.
No, seriously, and don't
Work in the
like
nursery.
For me, I'm just telling you, as an outsider, I had dated a guy who
Ask permission first, but borrow kids.
I did not hear what you just said.
It's fine. Move on.
I had dated a guy who actually believed that, and it came out in dating, that he would never change a diaper. Like, that was for women to do. Our kids are stealing pastries. Yeah. Go. Covert ops. Busted. So when I saw a guy who wasn't, like, afraid, he didn't like, oh, the kid's being awful. Like, you deal with it. Like, you're the girl. That was huge for me. So if you don't have the experience of doing mundane things, like, he has no problem doing housework, like, really no problem. And he pitches in, but I already knew that before I married him. I knew that because he'd helped me many times in my home, right? So those are things to measure, the mundane. Changing the tires, whatever. That's the stuff of life. It might not be paying the hydro bills, but, like, if you can have a dating relationship and you're somewhat serious and you can do some regular life stuff together, it will help you decide about whether this is worth a covenant. And that is the bottom line thing you're always measuring, by the way. People say, like, I had a young adult friend of mine a year ago, but I love him. So she was in love with some guy, and he didn't know God, and he was, like, a heavy drinker, and he was stoned all the time, and he didn't treat her well, and he basically was having a secret relationship with her. Anytime somebody wants to have a secret relationship with you, it ain't no good. But she loved him. She was in love with him. And I just said to her, okay, so I'm going to be straight with you. You might be in love with him. Ain't no healthy love. And at the end of the day, that love is not worth a covenant. That's what you're measuring all the time. Is this love worth a covenant? Just because you're in love with someone, is it worth a covenant relationship? Is this worth the whole of the rest of my life? Do you want to raise children with this person? No. Like, huge red flags, no. And finally she realized I was right, but she had created tremendous codependence and all kinds of things that were unhealthy. So do mundane.
Yeah, and I would just speak to the hypersexuality so oftentimes, I think, especially in church kind of circles, dating seminars were really all about, at least when I grew up and when I was a young adult, how not to have sex. That's probably what they were about, like, right. How to keep all your clothes on, class 101. And I would say, I think we give that way too much press. I think the deal is we are all sexual beings. So sex is a part of dating, and if your sexual ethic conforms to the person of Jesus, then I will say, though, I think what Christian people do when they're dating, don't have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex, have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex, have sex, have sex. Like, I think we get obsessed with it, right? And I just want to say, like, when you do get married, although sex is part of your relationship, it's not
7 times a day, people.
Or even 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna be straight.
We can follow the rabbis, which was 4 times on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Then I'm
getting very awkward.
I'm sorry.
It's going downhill very quickly. Okay.
But I think, like, just in terms of that, so we're not really speaking to that. Partly.
Can I throw in one thing?
Yeah.
I know it's not in our notes, okay? But we do have a lot of young adults in our culture today in the church who have a lot of sex.
Yeah.
And that's because they haven't understand that the biblical premise, and we're not going to unpack all of this today, the biblical premise is that sex is for a marriage covenant. It's for the covenant relationship. So we're not supposed to be getting some ahead of the covenant. And when you do that, you end up on all kinds of hot water because it's like you're having a covenanted relationship without the safety of a covenant. Okay, so that could be another one. And if you're like, we want to know more about that, you can just, like, message us at Down to Earth and tell us, and we'll do another one.
But the flip side to that is that we live in a culture of shame.
Right.
So we have all kinds of messed up marriages and messed up sexually marriages because people are like living, I had sex before I got married, and it's like, it becomes like the worst sin. Like somehow God can't love you, no one can love you, you are unlovable, and you project that feeling of unlovableness, because we hyper focused on it. Like we're not going to talk about communication. We're not going to talk about compatibility. We're not going to talk about chemistry. We're just going to talk about making sure that none of you have sex. And that creates unbalance.
Totally. And when I was growing up, we heard a lot of love is a decision, love is a commitment kind of talking. And that actually bit about, quarter of Christian marriages in Canada in the butt, and I want to tell you why. Pastors started seeing people who'd been married 25 years coming into their offices and saying, we're getting divorced, in droves. And they were the people that got love is a commitment, love is a decision messages. And guess what they didn't have? Chemistry. So they could stay up all night talking to this person. They felt super kindred, but they didn't actually feel sexually attracted to that person because that was uber minimized. You weren't supposed to have any of those hormone vibes going on if you were really godly. And then they got married and they had managed to have a bit of sex. They got a couple kids out of the deal. And around 6-7 years, they were repulsed and they couldn't make love because that person felt like their sibling. Why? Because that's the kind of relationship they set it up as from the beginning. And then they grew the kids out of the house, and they finally realized, this is totally false. We've been housemates for years. We can't keep doing this. And they divorced. So you better have a whole lot of chemistry, that 3 seconds. Am I attracted to this person? Not attracted to this person? Do that little evaluation, and then walk it out and commensurately grow your relationship. So more intimacy on every level, heart sharing, physical intimacy, spiritual intimacy as the relationship grows, and then covenant, safety, right? So you start out holding hands and it should make you feel like, all tingly, or maybe your heart's going to jump out of your chest. But 5 months into the relationship, the old hands is not doing the same thing, people, okay? But that doesn't mean we'll just keep progressing and we'll just get experimenting and trying out everything ahead of the safety of the covenant, which is why Paul says, look, if you're burning, get married. We're saying do some math that goes beyond your hormones, but don't discount your attraction. Does that make sense?
Good.
What else would you add? Of anything, Dave?
No. No.
Just no.
See, I told you. Straight. Yeah, I think just to honor everybody's time here, if you have more questions, we'd be happy to share them with you, walk with you a little bit. If you know us, great. You can sit down and have a conversation with us. If you want to fire off questions, email, you can do that as well.
Yep.
And listen to these two and their podcast. They're doing a great job. Thanks for being here today. I want to just kind of close in prayer, and if that's okay, we'll end our time here today. Any other thoughts? Yeah? Okay.
You can have a bit more coffee because there's still some, and there's some good pastries over there that you didn't get to eat yet.
I'll get the party music started and we'll hand out the scorecards.
So, Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for this time we've had to just chat and have a conversation about dating and relationships. Lord, I thank you for every individual in this room today. God, just bless them as they navigate through the questions, navigate through life, the relationships, and God, help them to be everything you've called them to be, to know who they are in you, Lord, know their identity and walk that out well. And so we just, we pray for great community, great friendships, relationships, and success as we just follow you and serve you well. God, we know you want to lead us in our dating lives and in relationships to come. So God, we just pray a blessing on every person in this room today. Keep us safe as we travel, and we thank you for being a part of this day. And bless everyone, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.